All right, folks, buckle up because today's deep dive,
It's gonna get a little weird.
we're tackling Air, Sold, Souls, Stolen Your Death in 6 chapters.
Yeah.
That title is just as dramatic as it sounds.
Yeah, it is. And it's so intriguing
Yeah.
right from the get-go.
I know, right?
What's fascinating is that the author compares canned air,
Oh, really?
specifically this company called Vitality Air,
Okay.
to, wait for it, Poetry Slam.
It's like he walked into a marketing meeting that went off the rails.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Vitality Air is actually this global success.
Really?
Yeah, they sell canned air.
Wow.
Mostly to people in like heavily polluted cities.
That speaks to like a desperation, doesn't it?
It does.
For fresh air.
Yeah, and it highlights this point that the author makes that people just crave what they lack.
Okay.
And that's where the Poetry Slam connection comes in.
So is he saying that bad poetry is like choking smog?
Not exactly.
Because I've been to some open mic nights that felt that way.
He argues that both canned air and good poetry slam tap into a need.
Oh, okay.
So Vitality Air sells you the feeling of fresh air,
Right.
that moment of relief. And a good poetry slam does the same thing.
It gives the audience like a metaphorical breath of fresh air.
Yeah, release.
An emotional release.
Emotional release, exactly.
I'm starting to see where he's going with this.
Yeah.
But the title, Your Death in 6 Chapters,
It's a little morbid.
it still has me scratching my head a little bit.
I think that's intentional.
Oh, okay.
I think he's trying to capture our attention in the same way that a slam poet would on stage.
Right.
And then he goes into these like unconventional rules for poetry slam success.
Okay.
And his first one is don't sell words, sell salvation.
So I shouldn't focus on like crafting beautiful metaphors or clever rhymes.
Not necessarily.
That should be offering like spiritual enlightenment.
Well, maybe not literal salvation,
Okay.
but his point is about impact.
Gotcha.
He's saying impact over aesthetics.
Yeah.
And he uses this really powerful example.
What's that?
He talks about how words can be a breath of life for somebody who's drowning.
Wow.
It's less about like pretty words and more about making the audience feel something deeply, giving them a lifeline through your words.
So it's less about pretty words and more about delivering a gut punch.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
Which brings us to his second rule.
Okay.
Be bold.
Be bold.
And he compares this to Vitality Air's audacity
Okay.
in selling something as basic as air.
Yeah.
For poets, he's saying be daring, shock, provoke.
So basically throw out the poetry rulebook and light it on fire.
He's definitely advocating for a less conventional approach.
Yeah, so less conventional.
And this is further emphasized in his third rule. Embrace darkness.
Embrace darkness.
He argues Vitality Air thrives on the world's problems.
Right.
The desire for something better.
Okay.
He suggests poets tap into that same darkness, that like raw, uncomfortable truth that we all kind of resonate with.
So instead of writing about like rainbows and butterflies, I should focus on the existential dread of late-stage capitalism.
He's not saying be all doom and gloom,
Oh, got
but
it.
to be honest and explore those raw emotions that we often shy away from.
So be honest and explore those raw emotions.
Yes.
Okay.
He gives an example.
What is that?
Fear in the dark. A
Yeah.
primal fear that everyone can relate to
Right.
on some level.
Okay. I'm seeing a pattern here.
What's that?
Be bold.
Yes.
Be raw.
Uh-huh.
Make people feel things that they might not want to feel.
Exact.
This guy's approach is anything but conventional.
And then just when you think you've got him figured out, he
Yeah.
throws another curveball.
What's that?
He asks this question. You think it's about air?
And the answer is no.
No, obviously.
About power.
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 Like mind control.
Not exactly mind control.
Okay.
But he suggests that both Vitality Air and successful poets exert a kind of control over their audience.
Oh.
They influence thoughts, emotions, even breathing patterns.
Wait, breathing pattern.
Breathing patterns.
Is he saying I can manipulate someone's breath with a haiku?
He's talking about this subtle art of manipulating the audience's experience.
Okay.
So Vitality Air creates this need, and then they fulfill it.
Right.
In the same way a skilled poet can lead the audience on an emotional journey
Okay.
and dictate how they feel and react.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
I know, right?
He's not just talking about writing good poetry. He's talking about mastering the art of manipulation of control.
Yeah.
Is that ethical?
It's definitely a question worth pondering.
It is a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be empowering our audiences and not manipulating them?
It's a good point.
But let's dive into his deadly tips before we pass judgment.
Okay.
His first tip is called the breath pause technique.
Ooh.
He compares it to those limited breaths you get in a can of Vitality air,
Okay.
and suggests that poets use strategic pauses to build tension.
Okay, I like that. Mimicking that feeling of anticipation for the next breath.
Yeah.
So I'm weaponizing awkward silences now.
He gives this example
Okay.
of how silence can press on your chest
Yeah.
and make you crave the next sentence like oxygen.
Right.
It's really powerful
Yeah.
for controlling the pace and the emotional impact.
Okay, I'll give him that.
Yeah,
A well-placed pause can definitely create some drama.
absolutely.
What's his next deadly tip?
His next tip is called "Write with a knife at your throat."
Right with a knife at your throat.
Yeah.
Okay. It's about injecting urgency and intensity
Okay.
into every line.
Got it.
He wants poets to write as if each sentence is their last,
Oh, wow.
as precious as every breath in a polluted city.
So I should be channeling my inner action hero while crafting sonnets.
He emphasizes the need to make every word count.
Okay.
He compares impactful words to those precious breaths of canned air,
Right.
limited and fleeting.
Yeah.
Once they're gone, all that's left is reality.
Yep.
So I've got to make every word hit like a shot of adrenaline, huh?
He's definitely pushing for a high-impact approach.
No pressure.
And speaking of high impact,
Yeah.
he introduces his own offering
Okay.
for aspiring slam poets. The Poetry Master.
Ooh, mysterious.
It is a little mysterious.
What is this Poetry Master?
What is it?
A secret society.
Maybe.
A forbidden scroll.
Perhaps.
Tell me more.
It's presented as a stark contrast to traditional poetry approaches.
Okay.
So instead of simply selling stories, the Poetry Master claims to teach poets how to command the stage,
Okay.
turning even the most mundane topics like canned air
Yeah.
into epic narratives.
And it's like a boot camp for poets,
Yeah.
transforming them from timid wordsmiths
Yeah.
into like stage-dominating powerhouses.
He's definitely promoting a more aggressive,
Okay.
less traditional approach.
Okay, so we've explored this bizarre world of canned air
We have.
and poetry slam,
Yeah.
and we've unpacked some of the author's unconventional,
Definitely unconventional.
even controversial
A little bit.
strategies.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is the million-dollar question.
And that's what we'll be exploring as we continue our deep dive
Okay.
into this fascinating and
Yeah.
slightly unsettling piece.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break.
Sounds good. So the author leaves us with this question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to write nice stories or make a real impact?
It's like choosing between a warm bath and a polar bear plunge.
That's a good analogy.
One is comforting.
Right.
The other one is shocking
And memorable.
and maybe leaves you with a better story.
He seems to advocate for that polar bear plunge, though,
Yeah.
pushing poets to be bold and even embrace darkness.
Okay.
He wants their words to cut like a knife and linger in your
He
mind.
keeps coming back to that canned air analogy, doesn't he?
He does.
It's like those breaths are a metaphor for how much attention the audience has to give,
I think you're right.
which isn't much these days.
It's not.
Not at all.
He's arguing that impactful words like that canned air are really precious.
Okay.
They should be used sparingly and strategically.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly.
And how you make the audience feel.
In those moments when they're hanging on your every word.
Yes, exactly.
And that's where his approach comes in.
Okay.
All that boldness and darkness and those strategic pauses
Right.
to create that unforgettable experience.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these things can all work together
Good.
to make a really powerful performance.
Yeah,
But I still have questions.
Like,
Is this just about poetry slam?
that's a good question.
Or can these principles apply to other types of communication too?
That is a great question.
Because let's be honest, most of us aren't going to be doing poetry slams anytime soon.
Probably not.
But we all have to communicate.
We do.
Whether it's giving a presentation at work or writing a blog post.
We're just having a conversation.
Right, exactly.
It's about the underlying principles of effective communication.
So could I use these deadly tips to spice up my next PowerPoint presentation?
You could try it.
Would my boss appreciate, like, a dramatic pause followed by a shocking statistic?
You might want to gauge your audience first.
True.
But the idea is the same. Being
Look,
strategic,
right.
understanding the impact of what you're saying and how you say it.
So instead of death by PowerPoint, it's like resurrection by poetry slam.
Maybe.
Thank you.
The point is we can learn from these unexpected sources. Even something as boring as canned air
Right.
can teach us about persuasion.
It's like that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
Maybe there's no such thing as bad inspiration either.
As long as you can find that valuable nugget.
Exactly. And that's what we try to do here on the deep dive, right?
What we do.
Sift through the noise, find those hidden gems, connect the dots.
And have some fun along the way.
Yes,
because sometimes learning is best when we're laughing.
Absolutely.
Or at least when we're curious.
So what have we learned from this wild ride?
What have we learned?
Through the world of canned air and poetry slam.
We've seen how a different approach, one that's bold, raw, and uses silence strategically, can be really impactful.
And we've learned that sometimes the most unlikely sources
can
teach us valuable things.
Yes.
And we've been reminded that communication is about more than words.
It's about crafting an experience.
Exactly.
Making people feel things.
And leaving a real impression.
Well said.
And I think most importantly, we've been reminded to think critically.
To question things.
To question things, yes.
And to always look for those unexpected connections.
That
can lead us to new understanding.
I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has been a breath of fresh air.
I agree.
Even though we did talk about death and manipulation.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
But now as we come to the final chapter of our exploration, let's dive into this poetry master.
Yes, let's do that.
What is this mysterious guide all about?
Let's find out. Okay, so we've danced around this poetry master thing long enough.
I know, right?
What is this secret weapon for poets?
Well, the author presents the poetry master as like an alternative to your typical poetry approaches.
Okay.
So it's less about like writing beautiful poems and more about developing these skills to dominate the stage. And really captivate an audience.
Sounds a little aggressive for a poetry reading.
It does a little bit.
Is this poetry slam or a gladiatorial arena?
Well, I think he uses that strong language on purpose.
Okay.
To emphasize the need for poets to command attention, to control the emotional flow of their performance.
Gotcha.
And he contrasts that with a more passive way of just like selling stories.
Right.
He suggests that the poetry master teaches poets how to transform even boring ideas into these epic narratives that grip the audience.
So less about what you're saying, more about how you're saying it.
Exactly.
It's not what you say, but how you say it, right?
Exactly.
So the author really stresses delivery then.
He does, and he really stresses using those deadly tips we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the breath pauses, the raw emotion.
Exactly.
The silence.
Yes.
To create that unforgettable experience for the audience.
Exactly.
So basically, the poetry master is like a master class in manipulation.
Well, maybe manipulation is too strong a word, but the author definitely emphasizes the power of language to influence our emotions, our thoughts, even our actions.
Okay, so if I were to buy into this whole poetry master philosophy, what would I be walking away with?
You would be walking away with a toolbox, basically.
Okay.
Full of techniques designed to enhance your stage presence, improve your delivery, and help you connect with an audience on a deeper level.
So it's less about writing beautiful poems and more about being a good communicator.
Exactly. And that's what's so interesting about this deep dive.
Right.
It's not just about poetry.
Yeah.
These principles can be applied to public speaking, to presentations, even just everyday conversations.
So I could use these deadly tips to spice up my next board meeting?
You could try it.
Throw in a dramatic pause. Before I reveal those quarterly sales figures.
It all depends on the context.
Sure.
But the main idea is the same.
Understanding the power of my word, my delivery, and how I connect with the audience.
Exactly.
I'm sold. Where can I get my hands on this poetry master thing?
Well, thankfully, it's not too hard to find.
Okay.
The author wrote a book, and it's called Poetry Master, Poesy Craft in 7 Taken.
Poetry Power in 7 days.
Yeah, it's where he really dives into all these ideas and gives you practical exercises to help you develop your skills.
So this whole deep dive has been like a long ad for this book.
Well, I wouldn't call it an ad.
Okay.
But the author's ideas are definitely intriguing.
They are.
And he's managed to get our attention, make us think.
And leave us wanting more.
Exactly.
He basically used all the same techniques in this article that he's talking about in the book.
He did.
Very meta.
It is.
I like it.
And it works.
It does.
It brings us back to his question. Nice stories or a real impact?
And he's clearly going for impact.
Definitely.
And you know what?
He's
given us a lot to think about.
He has.
He's challenged us to rethink how we communicate.
To be bolder in how we use our words.
To use silence to our advantage.
To embrace those pauses.
Yeah.
To let them breathe.
And to remember that every word we say can have an impact.
Every word.
Whether we mean it to or not.
That is a great way to sum it up.
I think that's the takeaway from this whole deep dive.
I agree.
It's not just about poetry slam.
It's about how powerful language can be.
Exactly.
The art of persuasion.
And how we all have a responsibility to use our words wisely.
Well said.
Well, it's time to wrap up this fascinating
and slightly unsettling
exploration of canned air and poetry slam.
A huge thank you to Stefan Pinkwart for this thought-provoking piece.
Yes, thank you, Stefan.
And to all of you out there for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, folks, keep those minds curious.
And those perspectives open.
And remember, the best communication is like canned air.
Invisible.
Yet potentially deadly effective.
And maybe a little bit audacious.
Be creative, Stefan. Until next time, folks, this is The Deep Dive signing off.